Sam, Steve, welcome to trnblock.com. If I can start this conversation with you, Sam, and as this is our first interview, can you briefly define the mission and vision of your company?
The vision and mission of our business is something that has been built not on a very fixed idea. Even though we had a business plan when we started the company, it was a little bit more than 20 years ago. So we said that we want to build a product and a brand that's around the Swissness, around our Swiss DNA, Swiss identity, and build a product that's very similar to a Swiss Army knife, and being versatile, universal, and still gadgety. So that was the vision that we had in the very beginning. Now we took that vision a little bit more into the direction of I don't want to call it world dominance when it comes to connectivity, but I think we achieved in a couple of years only, we achieved quite a huge reach of our brands in travel retail in particular, but also because we're a manufacturer, so we gain clients around the globe building products for them. So there's a couple of companies cannot say right now, so that use our products under their brand. And the mission now, I think, is really to make travelers' lives easier. So we know that we travel with a lot of gadgets, with a lot of electronics every day. And I believe that the challenge of finding the right cable, the right connector for each country, to have the right gadget with you is a key for everybody traveling. There's 99.9% of people travel with a phone, a laptop, maybe a smartwatch, and that number is even increasing, especially the number of gadgets are increasing. So, and we are the interface. We are the brand that makes the life easier. So whenever there's a Skross in a bag, should be the feeling, oh, everything is settled.
You're covered.
I'm covered. Correct.
Okay, now travel retail, as you just indicated, does actually represent a very high percentage of your business. I think it's actually around 50%. 80% of your business is in airports. I know how important you value collaboration, but what are the sticking points that you find you encounter all the time?
That's collaboration in a sense of we're working with operators,
yes,
travel retailers. So I guess the sticky point is on a positive that the people recognize that we are the brand that pulls people into the stores. So when we work with some of the larger ones like WH Smith's can't be in the electronic field, even Dubai Duty Free. So I think people are attracted by what we call the red wall. So it's literally the design of our packaging. It's a very red, again, distinctive Swiss colors, red and white. So that attracts people, and then also we have to touch and feel. So we have products that you can actually touch and feel and experience with it. And with that, on the downside, the difficulty that we usually face is that retailers are not very good in implementing the elements that we'd like to have and would like to see. So it's more on the execution side, on the retail side, that we wish sometimes that we could build a better red wall altogether.
Can you identify some of those?
I think those who are really a bit hard to work with are those who are more the general travel retail operators that are not yet focused too much on electronics, on accessories.
It's just not sexy enough.
It's maybe not sexy enough, and I think they do a great job by offering a general range of products. But when it comes to a more specialized range of electronics and accessories, that's not their turf. And we have to understand that also their business model is having products with quite a long life cycle. Like a Toblerone is a Toblerone, will be a Toblerone, maybe different packaging, different POS displays, but it will stay a Toblerone. A Jim Beam, a Jack Daniels will always be the same product with variations. However, in electronics, the world is changing like every 6 months,
yes,
maybe now 12 months. So the needs of the demographics are changing. The devices are changing. All of a sudden, there's a new technology coming out that requires a different type of charging, different cable, different voltages, whatever it might be. So that means that they are confronted with the fact that they need to review a range and then make a right selection of the brands that are out there, because a multitude of brands addressing different needs. They're regional brands, they're global brands, and then in our case we're the specialists in travel retail. So we are the ones. I like to call us a bit the hybrid in between the travel accessories and the consumer electronic brands. So we can bridge this sort of intermediate need of having the right accessories for either somebody who's just traveling and that just needs an accessory, and someone who needs a very specific charger for an iPhone 16. So we can do both. And what we need, of course, to help of our partners in travel retail, our retailers, the operators, that we can build this sort of environment where people can actually see, all right, this is what I need. I understand the range of Skross in the context of a travel retail operator.
So do you think that the phrase seeing eye to eye actually means something different in travel retail? I mean, does it still mean that one of the parties, and that is of course the suppliers, really needs to have their vision corrected?
Corrected, yeah. I think what needs to be corrected is the fact that they need to understand the demographics, how the demographics are moving. And with that, there are certain brands who...
You're talking about the retailers now?
We're talking about retailers, yeah. So that and I guess there's always a big discussion what's the need of the new generations, and what's the travel patterns, what their needs, what are they looking at, how are they shopping? Is it mobile shopping? Is it really interaction on a POS? And I believe that this change is something that we debate a lot inside the company. So how do we make sure that we become visible, and we also become attractive, and also we address the right consumer at the right moment. And I think this is a dialogue. It's not just us and the consumer. It's in a sort of a triangle where we need to retail and be part of it, and where we have very great examples in that case. I like to name Dubai Duty Free, where we have regular updates saying what's happening on the floor. So we have people on the floor, gives us straight feedback. The consumer don't like this, but they like that. And say, why is it? Oh, we ask the questions. They understand this, or they don't understand that. And this is the sort of, let's say, feedback process that we need. Whereas with some other retailers, they're just let you know feedback. They just give us the products, we know exactly what we're doing. In most of the case, they don't.
Okay, so you're basically saying that in your particular sector, retailers are generally behind the curve in terms of design, as well as actually up to speed in terms of the new products that need to be updated all the time. I mean, because they don't plan that way.
I don't think they plan it, but I don't blame them as well. I think where travel retail is generally doing an excellent job is with all the big brands and big categories. So name perfume, cosmetics, namely alcohol, spirits, tobacco, etc. But the marketing budgets are tremendous, and the implementation have been done in retail over the last decades is fantastic. It's a real great shopping experience. However, as I mentioned before, those products have quite a long life cycle. Now, if you do an implementation for a big cosmetic brands, you might have a new campaign with a different movie star that will be there for a season, but the product in the back remains the same. So basically, the displays and the concepts are identical. In our case, you have to question the setup, the range, but also the consumer call to action every year at least. And a good example is again Dubai Duty Free when there's a launch of a new iPhone. So that mobilizes the entire electronic team for a certain amount of time, because they know there will be a rush. So people will run into our stores to try to get a phone while they're traveling to Dubai. And with that, we need to make sure we sell accessories, we do this, we do that, and the whole presence will then be mobilized. The whole store will be then activated for one particular event.
I want to go back to the lack of data sharing. Your view is that this leads to many sales opportunities lost and the allocation of brands on shelves that should simply no longer be there. Is that correct? So which KPIs are king in your view?
One thing that is true that I like to call this the M&Ms, so the chocolate phenomenon. So very often in our segment, the retail space is a selection of brands and products that are totally disconnected when it comes to life cycle or to the offer for even price points. So very often They're the same products in 2 or 3, 4 different price points that are creating more confusion to the consumer than they actually help them to give to make the right decision. Now, I believe the data sharing, and with those who we share data, we can literally recognize, for instance, that it doesn't make sense in travel retail to drive to the bottom when it comes to pricing. Meaning that if take a very specific example, if you have a travel adapter that would sell for $5, you can find a product that fits that need. But why would you? So I know that the KPIs of travel retail is average spend per passengers, top end margin, and so on and so on. So why the need, especially in our category, to offer a cheaper product, a cheaper solution? And we've seen that yesterday also here in a Turkish airport where they sell one of the most commoditized product. They run a promotion on that. It's like you go to the supermarket and want to buy milk, 50% off. Why? You're going to buy it anyway. So in our case, we see that in certain categories you have 3, 4 brands, just differentiated by the price, instead of having one brand doing a better job in execution and maintain a price that's, I call it, fair. Don't overprice it. We have other examples of retailers doing that, to try to skim the maximum out of their clients. But stay fair, a good price level, but only work with 1 or 2 brands. So in order to maximize the revenue and the return, and also the communication in store.
Okay, so here's a crunch question, Sam, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier. Do you think that the knowledge base amongst the retailers is high enough to meet your company's values and objectives?
I don't think it is today, but the good news is I think that most of the retailers today, they have recognized that there's a need for it to improve the knowledge base, especially in electronics and accessories. Now, of course, travel retail is not a media market. It's not a Dixon's. It's not an electronic specialist. It's never going to be. However, I think now they're getting certain peoples with certain operators that have a background, that have some understanding of products, that more consumer-oriented, short life cycle products, where there's a need of rotation, there's a need of innovation on a permanent basis, and the thinking. So that's a mentality change that we see now happening with some of the bigger boys, that they understand if we want to be active in that part, and because I think electronics and accessories is a growing part of travel retail, simply because it's one of the necessities today. If you cannot buy cigarettes, so you don't smoke anymore, you don't drink, etc., etc. But electronics, you need a charge cable when your phone is dead. That's a basic. So and I think the travel retailers understand that the needs are covered by products like ours, and they need to get the people in who really cater to that sort of product category in a much more professional way. But it's happening. It's happening.
Okay. So with 50% of your business being in travel retail, I guess as a business you're going to stick with it. But do you think the business itself is reaching a tipping point where some brands could potentially withdraw from it altogether, precisely because of the cost of doing business in travel retail?
I see the risk effectively. So and that will lead to 2 things. First of all, major brands withdrawing from travel retail because the cost of doing business is too expensive. The consequence will be that you will see some lower quality brands coming in because the top end margin is bigger and they can trade on a higher price level. They gain some space, but with lower quality. And with lower quality, you have less of a brand presence, so it's a lot more commoditized range. Now, I believe that the life cycle that I mentioned before, shorter life cycle, means there's a lot more investment when it comes to innovation. So the ROI of any given product is maybe 12 months, make it 2 years. So that means that within that amount of time, you need to make some money out of a product. You make sure that you allocate the right levels of inventory, which in our case is always a big challenge, because we know exactly, we distribute products all over the world. How many of a given charger do we need to produce? Because we do not know how quick it will ramp up and how fast it's going to die off again. So, and this is the main challenge that technology brands have. So they need to understand that life cycle has a slot, and we need to implement it, make maximum money out of it in order to recuperate our investments. And if that doesn't happen, the channel doesn't become interesting. On top of that, we're talking listing fees and margin expectation, which is another subject, of course. If you would look at the top end investment listing fees as an example, and you take now a time range of 12 to 24 months again that you need to amortize your investment, very often with some of the larger operators you need 2, 3, 4 years in order just to make the money back of your investment. So some of the larger brands will probably then say, well, if I spend 100,000 in travel retail or 100,000 with a domestic e-commerce promotion or with a domestic retailer, that gives me a lot more traffic, gives me a lot more return. Well, the question is very simple. So the answer is very simple in this case. So I spent the money on domestic and just sell some common longer life cycle items in travel retail, but shrink my assortment. And by shrinking the assortment, well, the assortment becomes less attractive because there's no innovation in it.
Well, you're clearly going to stick with it, Sam, because sitting next to you is Steve Warden. You've just recruited as Head of Business Development. Okay, Steve, what are you going to bring to the party?
Okay, so I mean it's quite still early in terms of my job within Skross. I was working out early. I'm 10 weeks in, so I'm still learning a lot about the way Skross does things. Obviously, I'm aware of how travel retail works, but there are a different approach, as Sam's already sort of described, in terms of how Skross currently function. I think one of the main differences of Skross, as Sam has said already, is that it's a premium brand. It's seen as a premium position. And for me, that's something that was obviously quite interesting, because I think there's a lot of room within the premium market, not just for what we see as the core offer, but potentially how the offer could expand in the future. And I think the guys have done a fantastic job in bringing new products into the market that's given amazing visibility with the retail partners that have selected it. We can take some of those learnings now and clearly start developing new products that meet the customer needs of not just now but also the future. There is increasing pressure on retail price position. That's something we see. Regardless of how we try and maintain our cost prices, we see retail inflation happening. We're seeing retailers trying to improve their average basket spend through higher prices. That's a challenge for all of us, and it's certainly a challenge for us in this particular segment, because we are a distressed purchase, or certainly the core business is a distressed business. So what I mean by that is, you buy an adapter not because you want one, because you need one. And then we've all got, occasions where we know we've got one in the wrong suitcase and we forgot to bring it with us. And if you end up spending too much money on that product in a retail environment, you're not going to forget it. And I think that's something that we've got to be very cautious of.
Now, we know that the company's declared ambition is to be number one in travel retail accessories business. 2 questions out of this. First, what's your timeline? And second, and perhaps a more general question, do you think the retailers can actually grow the category itself by reimagining how it's presented in store? Now, Sam referred to this earlier. What's your view?
I'll answer the time frame at the end. In terms of what the retailers can do, I think the retailers are ready for it, for sure. I think what we've got to identify is that Skross's business has always been very, very focused on electrical retailers because of the tech element. And what we're starting to see, certainly with the new offer that was introduced over the last few years, is we're seeing other retailers starting to show more interest in it because it's not just seen as a tech product. And with that, what we've got to spend a lot more time looking at is how, or what's the right range for those retailers, because it's not the same as an electrical tech retailer. I mean, my previous experience, I worked at Dixon's Travel. Taking the approach of Dixon's Travel is not going to work in a duty-free player. It's not going to work in a landside store. So I think one of the things that we've got to do is be really clear with ourselves about where we see that we're relevant and making sure that the products, certainly that we'll be developing over the next 12 to 18 months, fit perfectly into those sort of range portfolios.
Okay, so the impetus of the business is clearly there for all to see. But how do you see it actually evolving in the coming years? I mean, with both products and perhaps an increasing B2C profile, dealing increasingly direct with your customers.
Listen, this is an interesting question. I'm sure we're not the only brand, not just in travel accessories, but within airport retail space that's looking at how they can generate sales before the customer gets to the airport. I think one of the things that we have to recognise is that, you know, the younger generations, there's a lot of conversation around Generation Z, those consumers shop differently. Now, if retailers continue to overprice products, then they're the consumer that are most likely to be affected by those price points. And as a result, they will look to purchase in advance. So one of the things that we have to understand is that we do need to get in front of those travellers before they get to the airport. What we also have to do is we have to make some really tough decisions. I think Sam mentioned this earlier about the type of products that we need to be showing those customers, those potential customers before, because the range that we do outside of the airport has to complement what we're doing within the travel environment. If it doesn't complement it, then it's not going to work long term. So I think we're very fixed on our view that we need to expand the offer in order to attract customers into the brand, but also we mustn't dilute what we already have, which is a substantial business within the airport environment.
Let's go back to the timeline.
So timeline, I mean, if I put a time on it, I'd say 5 years. That's where I'd like it to be. Obviously, the business is mainly driven by a core offer. And what I mean by that is adapters and cables. I think there's a significant opportunity outside of that. You know, a lot of work has already been done in the last 10 weeks at just reviewing where the gaps are and where the potential opportunities are, not just within travel retail, but looking at other channels, other retail space, whether it's online or even still the high street, where we may be in a strong position because of the brand heritage and what Skross means to a consumer and should mean to a consumer. The other thing that we are really focused on is really starting to build a story about Skross. We all know Skross within travel because, as Sam said, you see the red wall, but what we need to do is to be recognised as a brand outside of the airport. So we need to certainly have more of an approach in terms of Instagram and what we do in terms of social media, and that is certainly a work in progress and will help us to get to where we want to be within 5 years.
I'm aware that we haven't actually covered how well or not the business has been performing this year. Can you just walk us through some of the detail?
So in terms of the business is running pretty flat at the moment. I think it's fair to say it's been a tough year. It's been tough for many reasons. I think, you know,
it's not the only category where it's been tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened is that coming out of COVID, we were all taken by surprise. Certainly the factories were taken by surprise in terms of the repeat orders, because remember, a lot of these factories had no orders for over 2 years. All of a sudden there were urgent orders coming from, you know, all suppliers all over the world in terms of you know, trying to get inventory quickly for the retail customers, because the retail customers in some cases didn't know when their stores were going to open. So I think last year gave us a full sense of security in terms of return. What we've seen this year is we've certainly seen the sales flatten out. Some of that challenge for us actually in terms of growing the sales line is less about new product and more about actually trying to get more consistent supply from production. And as Sam's alluded to already, you know, we have got a relationship with a factory that we've been working with since 25 years, and certainly we're in a position at the moment where capacity is reaching a limit where we need to start thinking elsewhere in terms of production. Given
the circumstances, what have been your best performing products?
So it's been more the sort of entry price point basic adapters, our World to Europe, our Europe to US, Europe to UK. They're the products where, quite frankly, we have been caught out. You know, the demand on those continues to increase every year, and just as we thought that last year was a very strong year, what we've seen this year is that we've actually underachieved the sales based on not having enough inventory. The other thing that I think is important to say is that when it comes to the way that retailers work, retailers haven't wanted to hold as much inventory. So although as a business...
Have they been overcautious?
I think they have been overcautious, yes. I think what's actually happening at the moment is that we're seeing our sell-in certainly was tougher this year, as I've said, but the sell-out has been very strong. You know, and we've got accounts where our sell-in at the moment is flat, but the sell-out with those particular accounts is strong double-digit. So, I mean, that's encouraging.
And retailers aren't picking up on this?
I think they're aware of it, but I think the metrics, the measures, the KPIs that the buyers and the retailers are having to look at now, it's all about how do you spend your money and investment in inventory. And one of the big challenges we have in our category, certainly with new customers, is nobody understands the full potential in terms of the rate of sale at a store level. And that's the thing that gets, or certainly catches people out constantly. I mean, it's not unusual for us to go through, you know, a dozen stores under the same retail umbrella and see varying levels of stock, and in some cases the wrong inventory in the wrong stores. And that's something we've got to try and think about in terms of making the offer simpler and certainly making it easier to control the stock levels within those stores.